What's going on, crew? Pixie90210 here, and today I'm bringing you guys a series of 4 videos, this being the first, which is going to help a lot of you guys setting up your servers, okay? So, what we're going to be looking at is how to set up your home server, and this is the thing that makes it cool. It's for any version of 7 Days to Die, right? So, currently we're on Alpha 11. But this tutorial would have worked on Alpha 7, and it'll work on Alpha 11, and it's going to work on Alpha 23 in beta, and when it comes out of beta and it's all live and shit. And I'm going to show you how, because a lot of the problems that I get that people come to me with are with networking issues, and I'm going to break it down so that noobs can understand it, so that pros can understand it, and then you're not going to have any problems. Honestly, I'm going to tell you straight, after this video and the other 3 that go with it, nobody who's seen these videos will have any networking problems with 7 Days to Die. And that's a promise. And if you don't believe me, I'm drinking toilet water out of a fucking jam jar. That's how 7 Days to Die I am. Alright? So fucking don't tell me how to 7 Days to Die, because that's one thing that I do know how to do. Alright. So let me explain how this is gonna go. Like I was saying before, this is broken down into 4 videos. We have IP addressing, which is this video. I'm going to explain to you what IP addressing is. If you know what IP addressing is, then that's good. I don't care. Fuck off. But if you don't, or you need help, or there's something that you're not sure about, I'm going to explain everything in plain English so you can understand. Then we're going to go down into the next video, which is port forwarding, and then that will give you a step-by-step guide on how to get port forwarding up and running, no matter who you are and no matter what the ports are. I'll be explaining everything you need to know. Step number 3 is static IPs, which is completely optional. Some people want to know how they work or how to use them or whether it's worth setting one up. I'll be explaining that in the 3rd video. And the 4th video is dynamic DNS, which is again optional. And basically what it lets you do is have your server point to a URL instead of an IP address. So today, IP addresses, let's fucking go. Don't forget, people, if I'm going too fast, you can always pause this video, but I don't want to go slowly because for those who can keep up, it's going to be pretty annoying. So we're going to start off. Here is you, okay? And your situation is this. You have a computer and you're running the 7 Days to Die client. You also have either a spare PC or a spare computer of some sort, which is going to be your dedicated server. Okay, so there's you on one computer and your server on another computer. Now then, the next thing we have is your home network. Now this is your router, or whatever the fuck you call it. I'm from the north of England, so I call it a router, but some people call it a router. Or some people call it a modem, depending on what terminology they use. But either way, this is generally speaking your internet connectivity modem, which slash router, which gets you out to the outside world. Now, at the minute, we're going to use this black line that goes across the screen to represent internal traffic and external traffic. Okay? So, as you can see, everything below this line is internal. So we have your computer and you have the server computer, and as you know, they can talk to each other internally without having to go through the internet, out of the internet. They can talk to each other through the router. Okay, so this brings us on to the next thing. What you actually want to do is you want to be able to not only have you connect to the server and play on the 7 Days to Die dedicated server, but you also want, I'm going to say that these are your friends. You might have some friends look like this, or even this is random Joe Public, but you want these guys to be able to connect through the internet and into your internal network to play on your server as well. Okay, so Hopefully, as are still following me here, we have internal traffic. You see how these are green because they're on this side, which means they're in the World Wide Web, they're on the internet. So next up, let's talk about IP addresses. Now, each computer has one or more IP addresses. Okay, these are what are used to identify you on the network, kind of like a zip code or a postcode for computers. So let's just have a look at internal IPs first. Okay, now as you can see, we have the router itself has an IP address. Now, a router is also known as a gateway because it's kind of like the gateway to the internet. So if your computer wants to go on the internet, you have to go through the gateway to get on the internet. That's where it gets its name from. So you have a router which has its internal IP address, and each one of the computers on the network has an IP address. Now, if you notice, the only thing that's different from the router to the two computers is the last part of the IP address, because the bits before it are called the subnet and the domain. Okay? So all we're going to concentrate, because this is a relatively simple diagram, we're just going to concentrate on the last bit. Okay, so the 1110, 104, and the 1, because the rest of it basically means these are on the same network. Now, if we look at external IPs, we will realize that, whoa, hold on a minute, the router's got an external IP address as well as an internal IP address. How the fuck does that work? Now, say you get your internet from, I don't know, Virgin Media, or maybe you get it from TalkTalk or Tiscali or Verizon or wherever. When you get the router or modem from Tiscali or Verizon or Virgin or wherever, they will assign you an external IP address. Okay? And then the router itself has its own addressing system for each one of your computers that are plugged into it, and that's the internal IP address system. Okay? Each one of the people on the outside world, each one of your friends will have their own external IPs and their own internal IPs. But we don't give a fuck about them because that's not within the scope of this. You don't need to know anything about their IP addresses for now, only your own. All right then. So the next thing we want to know is, how do I find out my IP addresses? So like we were just saying before, actually, one sec, I'll just put this back on. So we have 1, 2, 3 internal IP addresses, and we have 1 external IP address. So the next stage is we're going to find out how we find out what they are, because my IP addresses will be different from yours. So first off, we're going to find out how to get our internal IP addresses. In order to do that, I'm making the assumption that you're running Windows here. What you would do is you would press the Windows key and R together. So hold down the Windows key and tap R. What this will do is it will bring up a run box like this. Okay? And then in the run box, you type C for cock, M for me, and D for Dick, and then you press OK. And what that does is it brings up what's called a command prompt window, which for those of you who are familiar with computers is like an old DOS window. For those of you not familiar with computers, it's a line, it's basically a window where you can enter commands into Windows. So what you have to do is you have to type in ipconfig with no spaces, and then you press return. When you press return, or enter as some people call it, it will bring up a bunch of results like this. Now, for each connection, you mightn't have as many connections as this. All this is saying is that my computer has Bluetooth, it's got wireless, the Bluetooth isn't plugged in, the wireless isn't plugged in, the other wireless isn't plugged in, and oh, we have a network connection here that is plugged in. Now, you might only have one that looks like this, or if you're connecting to your server via Wi-Fi, then this part might have nothing, but this part might have this kind of details in. Okay, so what we're going to look at here is this information. So it's detected that I have a network cable plugged into the back of my computer, and these are the settings for it. Okay, so let's just have a look at what we're looking for up here. So we can see my PC IP is 192.168.1.110. Oh, there it is. So we can see straight away a couple of familiarities. We can see that it's detected that my IP address is 192.168.1.110, which is here. And it's detected that my gateway is 192.168.1.1. Hey, hey, hey. Now, if yours is different, that's fine. Okay, but this is how you would find out what they are in the first place. Okay, so what you would do now is you would go onto the server computer. So obviously, what we've just done here, where we ran this and we typed this in, and then we got these results, we would do the exact same thing on our server computer. And then this would give us what the server's IP is. Also, on the server computer, you'll notice that the default gateway is the same as on your PC, and that's because the two computers connect to the same gateway. All right then. So, the next question is how do we find out the external IP? So, we know what our internal IP addresses are. How do we find out what the external IP is? Well, that is actually pretty straightforward. All you need to do is you need to go to Google and type in, what's my IP? And then what happens is the first result on Google will tell you what your public IP address is. So then, what we've just done now is we've found out how our internal IPs work and why they're there, and we found out what our internal IPs are, and we found out what our external IP is. So, what we need to do now is we now need to port forward the ports on our router so that when people connect to our external IP, it routes the traffic to the right computer, i.e., our server, because you want the external traffic to come in, hit the router, and then the router to go, oh, server's over there, and then it guide the traffic to the server computer. But that is in the next video. All right, everybody, I'm Big C90210, and now you should know how IP addressing works. This is the exact same thing for every version of 7 Days to Die. A little pimp here because I'm a boss. If you want a jam jar like me, I stole it from a bar, fancy bar that I was at. I was at a wedding on Saturday, and I stole it from the bar. Who gives a fuck? My server is currently live. There's a banner for it at the bottom, or just search for me, Big C90210, in the 7 Days to Die server listings. It's a modded PvP server. Come on in, kick some ass. It's all VO. And I shall see you guys in the next video where we're going to be learning some port forwarding. See you guys.